after 1960. So this is post-1960 we're talking about now. Mobutu took power, as I said. First they assassinated Patrice Lumumba, then Mobutu took power. He was a CIA agent. He ran the show from effectively 1963 or 1962 until 1997 when he was thrown out by American power. This is one of his palaces in Lisala after it was taken over and destroyed by the Rwandans who marched through the Congo in 1997. Mobutu is significant because he set the stage for the exploitation from Congo for that vast period of time. It was always blamed on Mobutu as if there was nobody behind him. There's no white guys operating behind Mobutu. Have you ever seen one? Can you name a single white guy that operated behind Mobutu? Congolese people and Rwandans don't say anything. Who? Jacques Chirac is a fair enough answer, yes. Anyway, there are other people, and they lived in Congo, and they live in Congo today, and they operate from Belgium. They go back and forth. They have multiple passports. George Forrest, one of the most powerful, the Forrest family, the most powerful families in the Congo. Maurice Templespan. Anybody know Maurice Templespan? He's big in New York. Templespan family operates out of New York. They operate in diamonds. Maurice Templespan was the man behind the say about the assassination of Patrice Lumumba and the assassination of Kwame Nkrumah in Ghana, and it was about diamonds in both cases. And Maurice Templespan, the Templespan family, began the diamond business in Congo roughly in the late 40s. And before I forget, because sometimes I forget about this, Israel was built on diamonds out of Africa. Israel was built on blood diamonds. Absolutely built on blood diamonds. If you start examining the relationship between Israel and diamonds, you find out it was all about diamonds. Remember Schindler's List, where the Jews escaped from the Nazis with their prized possessions, the gold in their teeth and the diamonds in their pockets. Templespan was Jackie Kennedy Onassis' lover, very close to the Kennedy family, sails off the Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts with the Clintons, very close to Bill and Hillary, traveled over to Africa when Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton went to Africa in 1998, I believe, which was considered to be Bill Clinton's victory tour because we had taken out Mobutu, and we being the United States government. Lazar Kaplan is one of the many Templespan diamond companies. You don't get any of this history of the diamond sector from, the real history of the diamond sector from the movie Blood Diamond, which actually leaves you thinking that there was this process called the Kimberley process, and no longer are there any conflict diamonds coming out of Africa because we solved that problem. The truth is the little guys, the rebel groups that are involved in blood diamonds are small potatoes compared to Maurice Templespan and Dan Gertler and Moshe Schnitzer and the other big names who run the diamond sector, including a whole bunch of law firms from New York. One of which, after I published a story about this, sent me a very nasty letter threatening to, sue me and take everything that I own because I'd written about their diamond interests in the Congo. Kilomoto, up in the north, it's considered to be the Congo's version of King Solomon's mines. This vast gold sector, gold region up in northeastern Congo. Nobody knows the story of Kilomoto. Nobody has told the story of Kilomoto. It's never been written what happened with Kilomoto and how it was connected to the white power structure and who was involved and how they control the Congolese people so that they can rip off the gold from Kilomoto. In 1998, a company called Barrick Gold, in 1996, a company called Barrick Gold had a director, a special advisor to this company called Barrick Gold, made a telephone call. He called up that guy named Adolf Lunden, who I mentioned earlier. And they had a discussion about the gold in Kilomoto and about the imminent overthrow of President Mobutu, which happened in 1997. This was 1996. This guy who made this phone call also called up Mobutu and said, you got to change something about this situation or you're going to be gone. Well, Mobutu is gone. He didn't change anything about the situation. And the guy who made the phone call was George Herbert Walker Bush, who turns out to be one of the advisors, or was one of the advisors of Barrick Gold Corporation, who led the charge into the Congo in 1996 with satellite mapping to map the gold in Kilomoto and other gold in the region. And I wish I had that map, because if you look at the mining across the eastern Congo, it's like you can almost white out the whole country. There's so many spots that are involved in the different kinds of mining that are going on. Anyway, the Barrick Gold Corporation directors include Brian Mulroney, former Prime Minister of Canada, former Senator Howard Baker from the United States, Baker Institute down in Texas, and a bunch of other very, very powerful folks. Mobutu maintained control through the Service d'Action Renseignement and Militaire, whatever it was, the SARM, S-A-R-M. through the Force Armée Zérois, through the Special Presidential Division, the DSP, Division Spéciale Présidentielle. These guys were trained by the Israelis, by the Mossad. They were trained by the CIA. They were armed with fancy weaponry, and they kept Mobutu in power for years. Somebody has a comment? Yeah, you're welcome to make a comment. I don't know all the information. I know some people have information here. Anyway, you see these guys that Mobutu kept power with these elite commandos. And it's exactly what you see in all these other African countries where the guy in power is run or backed by the United States or backed by Israel or backed by somebody. And virtually every country is backed by somebody and is not being run by a liberated African thinker or leader, because anybody who tries to take the country in Africa in the direction of the betterment of the people is hammered down unless it serves corporation interests. That little weapon in the foreground there is a Colt, I believe, and it could be a Smith & Wesson. And they're made in Connecticut and Massachusetts. And they make their way into the Congo. But I have not seen a single news article about the weaponry making its way into the Congo on this level, which discusses the connection to corporations like this. So the guns, the subject, the guns. What about gorillas, the African Wildlife Foundation, the Jane Goodall Institute, and the Dian Fossey Gorilla Fund? Well, if there's a Jane to go along with the Tarzan would be Ben Affleck. The Tarzan would be the New York Times writer Nicholas Kristof. Tarzan would be me, you know, the white guy who flies into the Congo or Africa and is going to save the world and, you know, tell the story and bring truth and hope to the people who can't stop killing themselves. That's the theme that we were given by Edgar Rice Burroughs with the whole Tarzan narrative, which began in 1935, 1936. And all those films that Hollywood started pumping out that come right up to the present time with films like King Kong and The Lion King, which is an anti-immigration narrative. You got the black lions that are from that forbidden zone. That's anti-immigration. And it's also got a white supremacist theme because you've got the Mustafa and you've got the other guy, I can't think of his name, the good lions and the bad lions. There's no people in the movie. The closest thing you've got to a people is a monkey. And then you've got the American media portraying Africans as monkeys in some articles. For example, Blaine Hardin's article about the coltan, which is one of these raw materials coming out of eastern Congo, portrayed the people as monkeys. Didn't get into the issue of how the coltan makes its way to Ohio and who brings it to Ohio and how it makes its way into our cell phones or our Sony computers, Sony laptops, Sony PlayStations, or you know, Microsoft or Apple computers. It doesn't talk about that. It talks about those Africans as monkeys. So the whole Hollywood theme with the Lion King is deeply racist, and you just connect the dots and you find out that some of the people that make the films for Hollywood, for Disney, etc., are connected to the Jane Goodall Institute and the Dian Fossey Gorilla Fund. And this goes really, really deep, folks. And most Americans care more about the furry gorilla than they do about the fact that there are these other gorillas with weapons that have been shipped in from Congo. From Connecticut, for example. People in America care about animals. You can really pull the heartstrings on America by producing stories about those gorillas being slaughtered, meaning this kind. And just do a little bit of work on the Congo subject for the last 4 years, and you'll find major articles about these gorillas being wiped out in Kahuzi-Bega. On Democracy Now!, you had Amy Goodman interviewing a woman named Christine de Schuler-Schreiber. It turns out that the Schuler family were the Belgian colonists who came to Belgium early in the scene, and her father, the grandfather, I believe it's the grandfather of the Schuler family, was responsible for creating the Kahuzi-Bega National Park. And the first thing they did was move the pygmies out. Well, you take pygmies out of their natural environment, and that's the end of the pygmies, and that's what happened. So it's genocide. But the woman that was presented as a Congolese speaker, speaking about the atrocities in Congo by Amy Goodman, was this Belgian woman, de Schuler-Schreiber, who's connected to especially the powerful German zoological interests coming out of Germany, connected to the Kahuzi-Bega National Park. And this is GTZ, German Technological Corporation. Just do a little research, you'll find out GTZ is connected to Kahuzi-Bega, it's connected to Christine de Schuler-Schreiber, and she doesn't want to talk about that. What she wants to do is whip up money for different white interests who are making money on the subject of rape in the Congo. How do you do that? Well, anyway, back to the subject of Tarzan. If there's a Tarzan, Jane is Jane Goodall. She's the American heroine. She's not guilty of anything. I mean, I'm not one to say that Jane Goodall is guilty of anything. But it turns out the Jane Goodall Institute in eastern Congo is providing these Depo-Provera implants to women who don't have any access to education, don't speak the language, can't read the information, and they can't get the Depo-Provera out of their arm or out of their body once it's in there. because there's no doctors around to help them, because they've all been shot. Because Dian Fossey Guerrilla Fund people go home at the end of the day and swim in the swimming pool. But who's going to write that story? And who's going to publish it? And who's going to read it? I mean, it's really offensive. Don't tell me that Dian Fossey Guerrilla Fund is a problem, or that Jane Goodall is a problem, because National Geographic for the last 50 years has told me that Jane Goodall is my heroine. And so she is. And I don't want to hear the story about how the Jane Goodall Institute is actually arming the militias in eastern Congo to make sure that they protect the Kahuzi-Biega National Park, or in this case, the new parks created up around an area called Walikele. And if you want to know about an area named Walikele, there's a guy in the audience who can really give us some interesting information about it tonight. Anyway, the African Wildlife Foundation, let's pick them for example. And Kigali, Rwanda, operates, guerrilla tourism is one of their biggest sectors. Plundering the Congo is their biggest. Guerrilla tourism is one of their next biggest. Anybody who flies into Rwanda today is supporting genocide by going to see the guerrillas. But they don't know that, and that's where that innocence subject comes in with respect to James Baldwin. But let's go back to the African Wildlife Foundation. It's just a big wildlife foundation. They care about elephants. Well, I got to support that. Send them 20 bucks. Well, it turns out the directors include a guy named Walter Kansteiner, National Security Council under William Jefferson Clinton in 1996 and 1997 at the time of the invasion of the Congo. Turns out Walter Kansteiner has got this secretive conservation organization in Washington, D.C., and they're funneling funds into Congo and Uganda and Rwanda, but we don't quite know what they're funneling funds in there for. The African Wildlife Foundation, Walter Kansteiner, turns out, National Security Council, remember, is also on the board of directors of a little company called Moto Gold, which happens to have one of the biggest new gold operations connected to that place called Kilo Moto. But nobody's ever reported that. Nobody's ever reported that Walter Kansteiner is connected to Moto Gold. Who's Moto Gold? Nobody's ever reported Moto Gold. They're not in the Congo. What's Congo? Congo's a bunch of Africans slaughtering Africans. It's a bunch of women being raped by those savage African militias. Who are those African militias? In the Congo, they're the FDLR. The FDLR committed